to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I'm Emily, and today I wanted to go through everything that I read in March. My stats, my star ratings, all that stuff, and just catch up with you and all that jazz. um, my March wrap up is going to consist of everything I read for Tis the Damn Readathon, which was so fun. Jan was an amazing host, and I filled all the prompts that I wanted to, even though I didn't read every single book I said I was going to. More on that later. Um, but I did fill all the prompts, and I was really excited about it, and so I had a lot of fun, and it was a great reading month for me. So without further ado, let's get into my stats. And I'm going to hit the stop recording button now. I'm going to be reading my stats off of my phone, and throughout this I might read a lot of stuff off my phone because I did script this out roughly, because my last video was completely off the cuff and it took me forever because everything I said I was like, that's so stupid, why did you say that? So if I read off my phone a lot, I'm sorry, but it's just to give you a better experience, hopefully. My ratings, my stats rather, were, I read 6 books, I read 1,799 pages, I read 4 physical, 1 Kindle, and 1 audiobook, and my average rating was 3.5. So that was a pretty good month for me. 6 books for the month for me might be low. It might be low for other people, but for me it's really high. So I'm really proud of that and excited about that, even though I did have more on my list. But yeah, let's get into what those books were, what I thought, all that stuff. Now, I don't have a copy of this book with me because, well, actually I don't have a lot of the copies with me because I unhaul books pretty regularly now, ever since I moved and had to unhaul like a ton of books that I only read one time and, DNF'd or whatever. I unhaul pretty frequently. I use Pango Books to unhaul, which is an app where you can sell books. It's amazing. Anyway, that explains why I don't have that explains why I don't have a copy of this book. But the first book I read for Tis the Damn Readathon was Heartstopper Volume 4, and I loved it. I gave it 4 stars, or no, 5 stars rather, sorry, it was absolutely a 5-star. And if you haven't heard of Heartstopper, or you haven't watched my previous TBR video, it's basically boy meets boy, boys become besties, boys become more than besties, and they deal with a lot of dark and painful stuff along the way. And I think that if you're going to go into this series, just take care of yourself, heed the trigger warnings. There's homophobia, there's eating disorders, there's bullying, all kinds of stuff like that. A great place to look at trigger warnings is the Storygraph. I highly recommend that. But anyway, my thoughts on the book were basically, I'm just going to read them. I just think that this book was so sweet, even in the darkness. Everything was dealt with realistically, and I really appreciated the message that love cannot fix your mental illness. And you can't love someone's mental illness away. And I think that's something that's not explored a lot, especially in YA. And I thought that that was just such a beautiful message to put in those books. Like, Alice Oseman is just, I can't wait for the series too. I'm gonna like absolutely lose my mind. When I saw the teaser, I was like writhing and crying. It was embarrassing. But yeah, I loved it. If you haven't checked out Heartstopper, Volume 1, absolutely check it out. Even though I loved it, I did unhaul it because I don't tend to reread graphic novels, and I really do need the space because I do live in a tiny apartment. So, that was that was Heartstopper. You guys, the next book I read for the month of March and for Tis the Damn Readathon was Tender as the Flesh. I know that there are a lot of there's a lot of division with this one, and I totally get why. I know that in my last video I was geeked about it because sometimes I do love to read something that's just good and horrifying, and I mentioned that in my last video, but ooh, you guys. So basically, this horrible virus affects all animals in this version of like the not so distant future. It's a dystopian. And it makes it so that animals are no longer edible by humans, or else, the humans will get sick and they'll die. So they make the transition to eating special meat, which is human meat cannibalism. And it's very much just like normalized to the point where I just didn't believe, like, I didn't feel like in that situation as many people would just be on board with it as they were. But that's just my opinion. Other people think differently, have thought differently. I've seen, several people think differently. But under thoughts, I did write, I love horror and I thought that I would love this, but I just didn't. I liked the first half, but the second half and the ending just really had me contemplating a DNF. I mean, obviously at the end I couldn't DNF, but you know what I mean. In the end, I was left feeling angry and disgusted. The disgusted part I knew I would feel, so I don't care about that, but I guess I just wanted it to go a certain way, and when it didn't, I felt let down by it. Does that make sense? It's definitely a book that I would like. If I were the editor, I would suggest some rewrites, but I'm not the editor. I am a lowly booktuber, and I just, it was a disappointment for me personally. If you loved it, that's amazing, and I love that for you, but it was a total letdown for me. So, yeah, that's Tender as the Flesh. This next one was actually a 5-star, and I'm really excited because after talking about a 1-star, it's good to talk about a 5-star. So the next book that I read, I actually listened to on Audible, and it was My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. In my last video, I referred to her as Emily Ratajkowski, and that is not how you say her name. I apologize for that. But I gave it 5 stars. It's a memoir about Emily Ratajkowski and her relationship with her body and the commodification of it. She talks a lot about sexual assault and grief and trauma, her complicated relationship with her mother also. And I just thought it was a beautifully written book. Emily Ratajkowski, I didn't know much about her until I read this, and like I didn't know she was in the Blurred Lines video because I honestly, up until recently, had never seen it. Because I just never seen it. It was never on my radar. And I don't keep track of models very much other than like Carly Kloss because of her relationship with Taylor Swift back in the day. But I just like absolutely just like was immediately sucked into her story. The way she talked about her life was just so immersive, and she's a great storyteller. The audiobook was top tier awesome. Like her delivery is so vulnerable and beautiful. And sometimes when she read a difficult part, her voice would break and she would cry on audio, and that would send me like directly into tears. I would feel like we were like at a sleepover and we were like just like swapping, sad stories about our lives. And I just like I felt close to this person who I don't know and who doesn't know me and who will never know me. And I think that's like the mark of a really great memoir. So I loved it. I highly, highly recommend that if you're looking for a memoir to read. It is just, I hear sirens. I don't know if you can hear them, but I'm not redoing this clip. Next book, I have an even worse relationship with than Tender as the Flesh. So, The Golden Couple by Sarah Pekkanen. Pekkannen. Yeah, Pekkannen. It's hard out here to say words. And Greer Hendricks. I gave it 1.5 stars. And I know that's weird considering I gave Tender as the Flesh 1 star and I just said that I had an even worse relationship with it. Here's the thing. I think that The Golden Couple could have been so good, but if it were written by like a different author. Like, this was my first foray into reading anything by this author, like, you know, this author team, and it just completely immediately made me think, like, okay, I'm never picking up anything from them ever again. Like, it was just, and it could have been so good. But anyway, the overview that I wrote down here is that a therapist who has lost her license deploys a new method for counseling. My hair just went like boop. For counseling. This method basically amounts to stalking and breaking every single ethics code imaginable. When a couple who is perfect on the surface comes to her for help, chaos ensues. And that's true. And that, you know, the synopsis that I read on Book of the Month really made me think, like, oh, this is about to be, like, you know, something, you know? And then, you know, it's like, I don't know how to talk about this book other than to say that I just hated it. It required me to suspend too much disbelief. And for me to think that the characters were like way smarter than they actually were, especially the therapist. I kept being told like that the therapist was like so smart and like so good at what she does, and then she would do things and I'd be like, that was so sloppy and so silly of you. Like, it was just heard a motorcycle go by really loud. But it was just, I feel like if you're gonna say that this character is smart and good at what she does and stuff, you can't just say that on the page. You have to show it. And I just wasn't shown it. I was like, this person is bad at what she does, and she was right to lose her license. There was also a lot going on that didn't need to be in the book. Every character was just like abominable, except for like the kid. The kid is blameless and all of it. But like, you know, it was insane. There was this girl on Goodreads who I'm friends with and who I'm mutuals with on Instagram. Her name, I believe, is, wait, I have it written down. Girl with the pink ski mask. She wrote a review of this book that was so funny and so on point. I'll link her socials below. I really get a kick of reading her reviews. She's actually a top reviewer on Goodreads. I don't even know how you get that status, but I'm impressed that she even let me onto her friends list. I think she's awesome. I'll link all of her socials below. So yeah, that's The Golden Couple. I went in a little more in my Goodreads review, but I feel like I'm not comfortable enough yet to go in as much in my YouTube videos with books I don't like because I feel so mean. It's easier to be mean when you're writing than to be mean when you're talking to a camera. You know you're going to post it on the internet. I don't know. But I'll work on it. The last book that I read for Tis the Damn Readathon, but it's not the last book that I read in March because I did go off of my TBR at the end. No one is surprised. If you know me, you're not surprised. But anyway, the last book that I read was Acts of Desperation. And I do happen to have this in my possession because it was so good that I was not going to unhaul it. Also, there's tons of highlighting in here that I just, you know, I'm not going to get rid of it. In fact, I loved it so much that I gave it to my mom to read, and she really liked it as well. So, let's get into this. I gave it 5 stars, obviously, and in overview, I wrote, an unnamed woman struggles with an abusive relationship with a man who isn't right for her, but she's still obsessively drawn to him, nonetheless. It's a dark story of obsession and love addiction. So this blew me away. The writing was claustrophobic feeling and beautiful. Um, the feelings of the main character were like so unhinged at times that I just couldn't believe it, and I felt for her so much. I just really wanted to like get her into therapy myself. I read this for the 5-star prediction prompt and for the, book that's Discord, why? um book that's been like recommended to you. And this was recommended heavily by Jan Agaton from Jan Agaton, who I love with all my heart and will link down below. And yeah, this was just such a great book. I highlighted so much from it. Let me see. I want to pick out part to just kind of. I'm gonna flip to a random highlighted page. Hold on. Stay with me. The loss of someone you love can make you go mad in the best of circumstances. I did not just love Kieran, but loved him darkly, wrongly. Losing someone you love in those ways can turn you not only mad, but wicked too. Like, I loved it. And I think everybody should read it, but you shouldn't mind the trigger warnings. There are a ton of them. I can't list them off the top of my head, but there were very many. I wrote them all down in my reading journal. It was a lot. So that's Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan. So my last book of the month, I went kind of off of my TBR. I went rogue. And I read With Teeth by Kristen Arnett. I gave it 4 stars. And whenever I brought it up to people, not a lot of people had heard of it. And I don't remember how I heard of it either. I think that's maybe somebody who I'm friends with on Goodreads was reading it, and it looked interesting, and I just added it, and then I got it for Christmas. So anyway, for the overview, I wrote down, Sammy Lucas is a lesbian mother who, on the surface, has a beautiful queer family unit. A beautiful home, a wife she loves, Monica, and their son, Samson. Everything is perfect, except Monica isn't around a whole lot, and if she's honest, she's afraid of her own son. She meaning Sammy. Sammy's scared of her own son. So, like, that sets up a pretty dramatic story, a pretty intense story. Although it's not so much story-driven as it is character-driven, which is very interesting to me. And all the characters, like, I'll tell you up front, like, all the characters are deeply terrible people, deeply damaged people. But they were so interesting to read about that I didn't care that much. I thought that there were parts of the narrative where there were like vignettes of people who ran into Sammy, or were a part of Sammy's life, but not like, in the core narrative. And you could see how they reacted to her, and it really helped to like establish that Sammy wasn't as reliable of a narrator as she wants you to think. And I think that was really interesting. It was a great book about terrible people. The one thing I will say is that I had some problems with it, and most of them like aren't really that big, but the big one is that there was a lot of ableism from the parents directed towards the child, who was kind of like a problem child. And I couldn't, I think that problematic themes in books are all, it's all good. Like, I like to read problematic themes and problematic characters because I think that it's interesting, right? To see how other people, tick. But, I just couldn't jive with that. It's something that's really sensitive to me. And if it's really sensitive to you, you should probably steer clear. And there's a lot of, trigger warnings, like I said, about Acts of Desperation that you should check out because it's really important to take care of yourself. You shouldn't go in blind to books like this. So yeah, that's With Teeth by Kristen Arnett. I did start 2 more books towards the end of March, like the very, very tail end of March. I started The Witch Haven by Sasha Payton Smith and Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. But I didn't get to finish either of them because I got sick, and I was sick for like a week, and I didn't feel like picking up any books at all. I was just like completely laid out. So those are carryovers that are going into April, and I will talk about them in my April wrap up. So that's all the books that I read for March. Like I said, I'm proud of myself for finishing the readathon and for reading 6 books, because although I could have done more probably if I hadn't, gotten sick, it's still a solid number. So yeah, that's dope. All right, I'm gonna do my outro now. Hold on a second. I'm about to do my intro. Whenever I'm about to do my intro, I've done one other video. But whenever I'm about to do my video outro, I always have the urge to like do the Graveyard Girl outro. That's like, if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that subscribe button. Like I always have the urge to do that to do that, but I'm not going to do that. What I will say is thank you for watching to the end, if you watched to the end. And if you would like to support me by hitting the like button or subscribing, if you're the nicest person in the world, and leaving me a comment, that would be amazing. And I, try to respond to every comment I get and hit the heart button on all of them. I don't get a whole lot, so it's pretty easy. So thank you for watching. And all of the links I mentioned will be down below. My socials will be down below. And if you want to read, more in-depth thoughts about the books I read, you can check my Instagram, because I post every review on Instagram, and I also post every review on Goodreads and Storygraph. So that's about it for me. I love you. I hope you have an amazing day. And yeah, bye-bye.